Sometimes you walk into a room and everything changes, but not because of how you speak or how you're dressed. It's something deeper, something unspoken, an energy that lingers before you say a single word. You don't always see it, but it's there, hanging in the air like a memory too heavy to name. People feel it in their chest before their mind catches up. It's the quiet proof of what you've lived through, the scars you never showed, the nights you held yourself together when the world gave you every reason to fall apart. But that energy didn't arrive overnight. It was forged in silence, in heartbreak, in every moment you swallowed the pain instead of screaming, in the strength it took to smile through your storm, and now it walks ahead of you, a presence that speaks without speaking. That power. It doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from survival. It's the kind of strength that has been earned and not declared. You've become the storm and the calm after it, the mirror and the truth inside it. And sometimes when you enter a space, you'll notice people shift. Some look away, some grow quiet, some laugh a little too loudly, like they're trying to fill the silence that your presence demands. You wonder what changed, but the truth is, you did. You became someone who makes others feel things they've spent years trying to bury. You stir the dust in their silence. Your very presence reminds them of what they have hidden from themselves. Insecurities, regrets, truths they had rather forget. And it's not your fault. You're not trying to expose anyone. You're just being real in a world where masks are the norm. And real is uncomfortable. Real doesn't apologize for existing. It's in your eyes, especially. The way you look at someone, not just at them, but into them. That gaze carries weight. It holds space. It says, I see you, and not everyone is ready to be seen like that. Some will hold your stare for only a second before retreating, not because they dislike you, but because something in them isn't ready to be known. Your eyes don't just reflect, they reveal. And for many, that's too much. Because we've all been taught to hide, to smile politely, to keep conversations light and avoid the parts of ourselves that still ache. But then you walk in, and without meaning to, you bring all of it to the surface. You don't need to speak loudly, you don't need to perform. Your energy alone shakes something loose in others. And that kind of presence, it's rare, it's powerful, and yes, it's intimidating. Not because it's aggressive, but because it's honest. In a world that thrives on pretending, honesty feels like a storm no one saw coming. There's a silence you carry that speaks louder than most voices. A stillness that shakes people, not because it's loud, but because it's true. Your presence isn't just felt, it's experienced. It challenges the comfort of illusion. It exposes what's been hidden. And without meaning to, you become a quiet confrontation to those still living behind masks. People don't always know why they feel uneasy around you. They might think it's your attitude, your calm, your distance, but it's none of that. It's what you reflect back. You stir the truth that lives underneath their roles and routines. You shine light in places they've left in the dark, and light, though beautiful, can be blinding when you've spent too long in the shadows. So they keep their distance, not because they don't admire you, but because they do. There's a respect wrapped in silence and hesitation. They notice your strength, your steadiness, the way you walk through life without needing validation. They speak about you in admiration, but rarely come close. Because to be close to you means letting go of pretense. It means meeting you where depth lives, and not everyone is ready for that. Some people look at you and sense the storms you've walked through, even if you've never told your story. There's a kind of weight in your peace, a calm that was earned through fire. You don't wear it like armor, but it protects you all the same, and others feel that. Not through words, but through the way you hold yourself, through the way your presence doesn't need permission. You don't entertain what's shallow, you don't cling to what's false. Your very existence demands a kind of truth people aren't always willing to give, so they admire you from afar. They might smile, speak kindly, even reach out, but something in them pauses, because deep down they know. You're not a space where lies can survive. You are clarity in human form. And that kind of clarity doesn't just attract, it disrupts. It breaks down illusions. It makes anything that isn't real feel out of place. You don't need to raise your voice. Your silence alone makes the noise inside others louder. And that's why, when you leave a room, some people feel lighter. Not because you were heavy, but because your presence made them feel the weight of their own pretending. You've walked through fires they haven't faced yet. Healed wounds they're still trying to ignore. You chose truth over comfort, wholeness over approval. And while that makes you magnetic, it also makes you rare. Not everyone is ready for rare. Not everyone can sit beside that kind of Rio without feeling the urge to run. But it's not rejection, it's recognition. A soul level knowing that you are no longer someone who will shrink to make others feel safe. That energy, that resonance creates distance not as a punishment, but as a sorting. Those who can't meet you in truth will fall away, and those who are ready, truly ready, will stay. Some will look at you with cautious curiosity, like they're sensing something ancient behind your eyes. And they're not wrong. You've turned your storms into insight, your pain into presence. You've taken everything that once threatened to break you and woven it into something unshakable. And even if you don't say a word about it, people feel it in the way you listen, in the way you look at them without judgment, in the way you don't need to pretend. You don't fit into molds because you never belonged in one. And in a world built on fitting in, someone who dares to stand in their truth will always feel like a revolution. You don't ask others to change, but by existing as you are, you make it impossible for them to keep lying to themselves. That's the gift. And that's the tension. Because what you offer is freedom, but freedom always asks for sacrifice, the kind that terrifies those still clinging to appearances. So let them hesitate. Let them distance. Your energy has already done the work. It doesn't need to be understood to be felt. And the ones who are brave enough to face themselves will find their way to you. Not with masks, but with open hearts. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't chase, doesn't need to announce itself. Yet when it enters, everything shifts. That's the kind of energy you carry. Without trying, without performing, you arrive and the room breathes differently. Not because you demand attention, but because your presence changes the very atmosphere. People don't always understand it, but they feel it. In the pause before they speak, in the glance that lingers too long, in the sudden stillness that creeps into the space. Something unspoken moves through the air when you walk in. It's not dramatic, but it's undeniable. You become the quiet storm, the still flame, the gravity that pulls everything into its rightful place, sometimes gently, sometimes with tension, but always with truth. You've done your inner work. That's why it radiates through you like a frequency. It's in the way you hold yourself, the way you see without judgment, the way you stand without needing to be noticed. You don't try to affect others, but your energy does the work anyway. And not everyone is ready for what that stirs. Some feel a sense of relief, as if they've finally stepped into a space where they can exhale. Others, they tighten, they fidget, they laugh too loudly or say something out of place, not to hurt, but to distract from what's being awakened inside them. It's not personal. It's never been about you. It's about what they feel in your presence. And sometimes that's the first honest feeling they've had in a long time. You bring clarity, you bring coherence. And that's not always easy to receive. Because when you enter, the superficial starts to crack. The noise quiets. The small talk dries up. Gossip fades. People look up from their screens, glance over their shoulders, straighten their backs. Not because you've spoken a word, but because your silence says enough. It says, here, we don't pretend. It's the truth you carry, not spoken but lived, that creates the shift. The boundaries you hold, the pain you've processed, the peace you've claimed, they've shaped your field. And that field, it touches everything around you. It tunes the room like a string pulled tight across a harp. Whatever is out of tune begins to buzz. Whatever's hiding starts to tremble. You don't call it out. You don't need to. They feel it. Some people soften in your presence. They lean in. Their eyes brighten. It's like something inside them recognizes something inside you. A resonance, a matching key. And for a moment, it feels like safety. Others, though, back away, not with words, but with energy. As if being too close to you would unravel everything they've worked hard to keep together. And still you remain, rooted, present, holding your vibration without apology. That's your quiet revolution. That's your gift. You've learned that your job isn't to fix what trembles in others. It's not to shrink so they feel less exposed, or to shine brighter so they'll notice. Your only task is to be. To stay true, to stay centered, to allow your energy to move where it will without clinging to what it changes. Because you are the mirror. And sometimes mirrors reflect beauty. Other times they reveal what's been denied. That's not something to fear. That's not something to carry. It's simply what happens when someone who lives aligned walks into a world built on illusion. The shift is natural, the ripple is inevitable, and you're simply being what you were always meant to be. a presence that calls everything around it closer to truth. There's a point in your journey where something quiet but monumental begins to shift. You don't shout about it, you don't need to, but everything starts to feel different inside and out. You're no longer negotiating your worth, you're no longer stretching yourself thin just to make others comfortable. Something in you has settled into certainty. Not arrogance, not resistance, just knowing. It begins with your boundaries. They're no longer lines drawn in sand, easily washed away. They become rooted, like stone placed with care. You don't explain them, you embody them. You say no, and the world hears it even in silence. You say yes, and it comes from choice and not guilt. There's no longer that urge to soften the truth, to cushion your honesty, to make your discomfort easier for others to digest. And people notice. Some are stunned by the change. They don't quite know how to navigate the new version of you, the one that no longer bends by default, the one that no longer accepts crumbs in the name of connection. The ones who once leaned on your availability and now feel the edge of your limits. The door they used to walk through without knocking is closed, still warm, still kind, but locked unless invited. What they feel now isn't coldness, it's coherence. It's the clarity of someone who finally understands that their value isn't tied to being everything for everyone. It's the calm refusal of someone who's done leaking energy into hollow places. You've stopped abandoning yourself just to be included, and now the game has changed. Some people will walk away, confused by the fact that the old patterns no longer work. They try the same manipulations, the guilt, the minimization, the pressure, but you no longer flinch. Your energy doesn't waver. Your silence now carries weight, and your presence delivers the message without you needing to speak. This is my space, and it's no longer up for negotiation. And others, the rare ones, they adjust. They rise to meet you. They don't argue with your boundaries, they respect them. They learn to ask, not assume. They give, not just take. These are the ones who see your clarity and are inspired by it. Your energy becomes a mirror, soft, steady, unfiltered. And in that mirror they glimpse their own scattered edges, their own abandoned needs. And maybe for the first time they pause to reconsider the shape of their own boundaries. Because your shift doesn't just change your world, it echoes. It wakes people up. It rearranges relationships, not out of force, but out of truth. What was never real starts to fall away. What was built on mutual respect begins to deepen. And the tension you once carried, the weight of pleasing, explaining, defending, begins to lift. You breathe easier. The silence you once feared becomes sanctuary. The solitude that used to sting now feels like peace. There's more space inside you, more clarity in your mind, more energy to pour into the things that actually feed your soul. You've reclaimed what was always yours, your time, your attention, your power, and the world adjusts. Invitations become fewer, but they're more honest. Conversations grow slower, but more meaningful. The chaos dims, and in its place, a quiet sense of alignment. You no longer need to be everywhere. You no longer chase what drifts. You've stopped watering the dead, and instead you've begun to bloom in your own soil. This is what happens when you stop betraying yourself in the name of being liked, when you stop negotiating your needs for the sake of keeping the peace. What rises from that choice isn't a wall, it's a garden, and not everyone will know how to enter it. But those who do will come with reverence. You start to realize that real power has never been about control, it's been about presence. And your presence, refined through years of self-reflection and quiet struggle and countless inner deaths and rebirths, now speaks a language few can name but many can feel. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't try to impress. It just is. And in its being, it heals. You've come to understand what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You see it now, not just as a quote, but as truth lived through your bones. Every time you honor your boundaries, every time you say no without guilt, every time you choose yourself, you're rewriting the story your unconscious once whispered on repeat. You're not waiting for pain to force clarity anymore. You're choosing awareness before the ache, stillness before the storm. And yes, this shift unnerves some people, especially the ones who fed on your constant availability, who mistook your gentleness for permission to take. Now that you no longer bend by default, now that your yes carries meaning and your no carries weight, some pull away. But you don't chase, because something deeper in you knows. You're not here to be accessible to everyone. You're here to be aligned with yourself. And from that place of alignment, something beautiful begins to happen. The sensitive ones, the souls who still remember how to feel, find their way to you effortlessly, not because you're trying to be anything, but because your energy speaks clearly in a world where most people mumble behind masks. Children who barely know how to form full sentences will look at you with wide eyes and complete trust. A skittish dog might rest its head near your feet, tension melting away. A stranger might tell you things they've never told anyone because somehow, in your presence, they feel safe. They feel seen. And that safety, it's not loud. It's not something you can fake. It's born from your own inner coherence, from the way you now live in alignment with your values, your boundaries, your truth. Those who are tuned in feel it immediately, not with logic, but with instinct. You don't even need to speak for them to sense it. You are the message. You are the space. They trust you not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because your energy doesn't pretend, doesn't manipulate, doesn't demand anything in return. It simply holds. And in a world where people are so used to being judged, controlled, or misunderstood, that holding, that soft, unspoken "I see you" is rare enough to feel like magic. You've probably had moments that caught you off guard. A stranger brushing your hand a second longer than expected. A child you've never met suddenly wrapping their arms around your legs. A random conversation where someone you barely know opens their soul to you without hesitation. That's not randomness, that's resonance. That's what happens when your energy begins to feel like home. And what's most remarkable is that it's not because you've reached some final form. It's not because all your wounds are gone or because you never struggle anymore. It's because you carry your healing like a quiet song now. You no longer try to cover the scars. You simply live with them open, honest, integrated. And in that transparency, others find the courage to take off their own armor. Even the most sensitive among us, the ones who feel everything, who have been burned by too much noise and too little truth, they recognize it. They come closer, not because you ask, but because your energy invites. Not through words, but through frequency. You become a tuning fork for authenticity, and those who still remember what real feels like can't help but respond. You become a sanctuary without walls, a light that doesn't blind, a presence that doesn't try to lead but simply stands, and somehow, in doing so, shows others the way back to themselves. There's something extraordinary about the way your energy speaks, wordlessly, effortlessly. It tells the people around you you're safe here. Not because you're flawless, not because you've transcended pain, but because you've chosen to face your darkness rather than deny it. You don't hide your shadows behind a smile. You've made peace with them. You've invited them in, learned their names. And in doing so, you've created a kind of stability that others can feel, even before they understand it. There's no emotional whiplash in your presence. No double meanings, no hidden expectations waiting to explode beneath the surface. Just presence, just clarity. And that simplicity. It's disarming in the best way. People don't know why they feel so at ease with you. They just do. Their breath slows, their shoulders drop. Something inside them says, I can rest here. Animals, perhaps more than anyone, sense it first. The way a nervous dog stops barking when you step into the room. The way a cautious cat chooses your lap over all others. It's not because you're trying to be gentle. It's because your energy is gentle. Because you're not carrying chaos beneath the surface. Because your vibration doesn't lie. They sense there's no need to defend themselves around you. There's nothing threatening in your stillness, nothing manipulative in your silence. They trust it. And they teach us that trust, real trust, isn't something you demand. It's something you become. But this kind of resonance carries with it a quiet responsibility. Once you become a refuge, and you must care for your inner world like sacred ground, your peace is no longer just for you. It becomes a resting place for others, which means your rest, your boundaries, your emotional hygiene, they all matter more now than ever. You begin to notice how even the smallest disruptions affect your field. The wrong conversation, the wrong energy, the wrong environment. Everything that feels dissonant now rings louder in your body. And so you get better at protecting it, not just with words, but with choices, with presence, with silence. Because while many come to you for healing, not all of them come to heal. Some seek to consume your calm because they can't yet create their own. They're drawn to your light, not to honor it, but to escape their own darkness. That's when your boundaries become sacred. Not walls to keep the world out, but gates that require intention to pass through. And not everyone will have the key. And still you remain open. Still you receive. Because for every draining interaction, there's also that moment of deep resonance. The child who smiles at you for no reason, the stranger who shares a secret they didn't know they were holding, the animal who finds shelter in your stillness. These moments are offerings, proof that your path matters, that your authenticity doesn't just serve you, but serves the whole. You begin to understand something you once only hoped was true, that your healing is never just for you. It echoes, it touches, it opens doors in hearts you'll never fully know. That's what makes the quiet work worthwhile. That's what makes all the inner labor sacred. So when someone exhales a little deeper in your presence, when their eyes soften, when they lean in without knowing why, know this. Your aura is doing exactly what it was meant to do. It's holding space. It's making truth feel safe again. And that in a world addicted to performance is a rare and beautiful gift, not because you're trying, but because you are simply being who you've become. Real, unapologetic, awake. And whether anyone says it out loud or not, they feel it. They remember it. And maybe, because of you, they begin to come home to themselves too.